Good day and welcome to another exciting episode of Logistics with Purpose. We have an amazing guest and I have a really good co-host. Wade, your first time here co-hosting the show. How are you doing?
First time, I'm good. I know you've been trying to get me on the show for a while now. Now I'm here.
Finally. Yes. Has it been a good week for you?
It has been a great week.
Well, today we have a really good guest. So without further ado, let me introduce you to John Bruens. He is the founder and chief executive officer of Transplant Solutions. John, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic. Before we started kind of recording this show, you're telling us about your soccer professional career. That's amazing. Very shortly, can you tell us a little bit about soccer so that we can share it with our audience?
You know, I grew up in a very small town in Connecticut, and my father was an athlete. My two older brothers were athletes. Actually, my oldest brother was the first high school student in the state of Connecticut to do an Iron Cross on the rings, gymnastic rings, when he was a sophomore. So I grew up in a town where my graduating class was 40 kids. So if you were an athlete, you played every sport. And so I actually lettered in high school 12 times. So I had 12 athletic lettering because I played baseball, basketball, soccer, and track, right? So I spent my whole life doing athletics, really. I mean, that was my kind of claim to fame because it was easy. I didn't even have to try, you know? I mean, my baseball coach when I was 12 years old said, "You're going to be a professional baseball player." My basketball coach said, "If you grow 3 more feet, you might even be a professional basketball player." But soccer came naturally because I could run. I was a goalkeeper. I had good hands. So that was kind of my early claim to fame, though it wasn't because it was easy. It really wasn't what I wanted to do. I ended up doing it just because I could, but it really wasn't what I wanted to do because it just came easy. And I was never the type of person that followed the easy path. I always tried to find things that were really hard, and that's what turned me on. So I played soccer, played professional soccer, came to Clemson University in South Carolina. That was my introduction to South Carolina, where my company is located. Played for Clemson. When I arrived at Clemson my first year, I was one of 3 natural Americans on the team. The rest of the team came from all over the world. My captain, Benedict Papula, he went on to play professionally in Europe. A bunch of the guys did. So I showed up at this school in Clemson, didn't even know Clemson existed till the coach called me. And we were the #1 team in the country. I still to this day believe I'm the only starting goalkeeper at Clemson that went to back-to-back Final Fours in the NCAA championships. So so soccer came easy. Got me a degree, got me a degree, got me into college. I could never have gone to college if I wasn't an athlete, couldn't afford it. So it was good.
Well, congratulations and thanks for sharing. I'm sure we're going to be extracting some of your learnings, right? From that part
Absolutely.
of you, competitiveness. I'm sure there's a lot of things that can translate into business, but before, and 1 second, let's get started here with what we are doing. This is a new segment, right? We're going to ask you a bunch of quick questions and you can respond with whatever comes to your mind. Sure. You ready?
Yep.
All right. What is your favorite way to start your day?
Well, at my age, I guess waking up.
Waking up it is.
That's a good start.
Every time I wake up, I look and say, "Hey,
that's always a good thing." What's one thing you can live without? Can't live without?
I don't think I could live without my wife.
All right. What's one thing you do to stay productive?
Focus. I think focus. There's so many things coming out of left field when you run a business like this that you really have to kind of put blinders on often and focus on the things that have to be done.
If you could have a superpower, what would that be?
Maybe turn invisible.
The invisibility cloak.
That would
What does your perfect day look like?
Well, I guess it depends. A perfect work day would be getting up, coming to the office, seeing my employees who have smiles on their faces, and then hearing from my customers of how excited they are and how happy they are of how we treat them.
Wade?
No, that's great. That's great.
I think you have a
I'm,
couple of questions too, don't you?
I don't know that I do.
All right, I'll ask them for you.
So-
I know you're a pet lover. What are the names of your pets?
Okay, let me see. I have 3 dogs, Sable, Sophie, and Winnie, and a cat,
Right.
11. The cat 11 is named after the character from Stranger Things. If you watch Stranger Things,
Oh
11
yeah,
was,
it's a great show.
yeah, 11 was a girl that just showed up one day. Well, 11, our cat, showed up in our garage almost dead, literally couldn't walk,
Oh,
had starved basically to death. And my wife took care of him, and now she's a member of the family, and she's going on 10 years now.
wow.
Yep.
And last but not least question, you're also a chocolate lover. What's your go-to
How do you
brand?
know that?
It's in your website. It's your
Oh, right, that's right.
your what was it? Your guilty pleasure, and you wrote down chocolate, chocolate, and chocolate.
Yes, yes, I am a chocolate fanatic.
I share the
So
same passion.
any brand in particular, or
Well, national brands, it would be Godiva, I would say, is my favorite. But there's a little chocolatier shop in Simpsonville, South Carolina called Cocoa Bon. It's a little place. It's like the size of my office, and they are unbelievable. They make chocolates that just blow me away every time I go in there. So yeah, so I know
we'll add Cocoa Bon in the description in the comments so that people
Okay.
can look for them in
Maybe
South
I'll get some
Carolina.
free samples or something from them. Like I need it. Like I need.
Well, John, thank you so much for your answers. And now that we're a little bit more familiar with you, personality-wise, tell us a little bit more about your background. Where did you grew up? What was your childhood like?
Sure. Oh, I was born and raised in the northwestern corner of Connecticut, what's called the Berkshire Hills or Litchfield County, in a very small town called Washington Depot, Connecticut. If you are a fan of a TV show called Dawson Creek, which was kind of a nighttime
Oh
soap
yeah,
opera,
remember that well.
you remember that one? Well, that took place in Washington, Connecticut. They used Washington, Connecticut as the background for that show, which is amazing because if you go to Washington, we're a town that has no traffic lights. I live in a town now that has one. Washington Depot is on the Chappaqua River. My house I grew up in from about the age of 10 was right on the river. So by the time I was 10 years old, I was a fly fisherman. I would swim in that river. All my friends would swim in that river. So I grew up in a very country environment in a very small school. Like I said, my graduating class was 40 kids. But I was a natural athlete. So in this small town, everyone knew who I was simply because of my athletics. But when I was really young, I mean, I've asked this question myself. Why am I here? How did I go through all this stuff to get to like where I am now? And why did I have this internal feeling that I wanted to be a scientist, right?
Oh,
From as far back as I can remember, I wanted to be a scientist. And so I didn't understand why, really, except that as I look back in all the things that happened, one of the things that happened to me when I was like 5, 6, 7 in there someplace, we were living, this is before my father and mother divorced. We were living in a 3-family house in Washington, and we were on the first floor. And on the second floor was another young family that had a young girl, Carla, I think, Carla or Kaylee, something like that. But she was like 5 too. And one day my mother sat me down and said, I think it was Kaylee, Kaylee's gone to heaven. And I was like 5.
oh,
I was like, where's that? That was I think my first question was like, where's that? And she said, no, she's passed away. I was like, she was 5 years old. It didn't make any sense. And my
right.
mother said, well, she died of cancer. And I was like, well, what's that? And my mother didn't know what it was. And my mother wasn't a scientist or anything. My mother cleaned houses. So it just stuck with me. So then when I'm like 12 years old, somewhere in there, 11, 12, in my town, they had the Lions Club auction. Every year, people from town would bring all the crap they didn't want. They brought it to this big building in town, and it was an open auction where you could go in and basically buy anything. So my older brother bought a box of books for $1. And he brought it home, and I came down for breakfast, and the box was in the middle of the kitchen table. So I started looking through it, and there was a college biochemistry textbook. And I took it out, and I opened the first page, and I'm like, wow, I have no idea what this means, any of this. I was reading through it, looking at the pictures and reading what they were saying. I was like, I don't know what this is, but this is what I want to do. And I became a biochemist. I graduated from Clemson with my degree in biochemistry. I assumed I was going to go into medical research, because back then, I mean, I even remember this. There was a blizzard in town, and we lost power. And so I was just sitting in our living room with a fireplace going, and I was kind of daydreaming almost. I thought, you know what, it would be really cool if I could become the head of a company that found a cure for cancer. And that stuck with me.
Wow.
So I got my degree in biochemistry. While I played soccer at Clemson, I went to Clemson on a full athletic scholarship, got my degree in biochemistry. And I can tell you, I was the only soccer player getting a degree in biochemistry.
Especially goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I graduated, prior to that, I had been living in New York, and I walked into the Rockefeller Research Foundation in downtown Manhattan. If you know anything about this Rockefeller, it's the Rockefeller money built this research center. And I walked into one of the labs and said, you know, I think I was a sophomore at Clemson at this point. And I said, listen, I want to work in this lab, and you don't even have to pay me. I just want to come in and work. And the guy running the lab was like, okay. So I started doing simple lab stuff, and they eventually paid me, but that set the tone that I knew what this is what I wanted to do.
Right.
I wanted to do this kind of stuff. So
And you've been doing it, right? I mean, you have 40 years in the biopharma industry,
Yeah.
more than
I started in
over 40
research.
years.
Yeah,
Starting research.
when I graduated, I played soccer for a year, a little more than a year, and realized that, okay, you can't make any money in the United States playing soccer, for one thing. And it
Back
was
then, at least, yeah.
Yeah, back then. And you know, I wasn't that good. It wasn't like I was messy or anything, so I wasn't gonna make that kind of money. But I just didn't feel like this is what I want to do.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it just wasn't floating my cork. I'd actually gotten almost sick of playing, because it's just so much on your body and all that. So I went back to Rockefeller after I'd graduated and got done playing soccer, and the guy that I'd worked for had left. So I walked across the street in Manhattan on 60th Street, walked across the street where Cornell Medical Center was, and walked into the HR department and brought my resume, and I handed it to the woman at the desk. And there was this guy who reminded me of Albert Einstein talking to a woman behind he had white hair sticking out like this, and he was kind of yelling at this woman about, listen, I need some help. So I'm not really watching, I'm just hearing this. And the girl says, Dr. Meister. And he says, what? He said, it's somebody right here. So she handed Dr. Alton Meister my resume, right?
Oh, wow.
He's a Nobel guy. I mean, he was like a founder of some of the biochemistry stuff that goes on today in bachelor degree studies. He did. And actually, I kept that book my brother had bought in that box, and Alton Meister's name was in that book. So I worked with him for a year doing basic lab stuff. You name it, I did it.
Wow.
So
after, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so after that, you focus more on like the sales, market research and marketing side.
No,
right?
I didn't. What bothered me about Cornell was A, it was in Manhattan, which is really expensive. B, you don't get paid anything when you work in the labs. I mean, I would have to have gone and got my PhD, even an MD and PhD, if I was going to make any money. And I wasn't prepared to do that, but that didn't matter. I was doing what I loved. And so the guy who I'd taken over the position from at Cornell had gone into the pharmaceutical industry. And he came back to Cornell to meet with some of the people he'd worked with, just on a lunch type of thing. And we met, and I asked him about, the transition from this from, you know, academic research into the industry. And he said, well, the first thing you'll notice is your pay. He said, you will, you know, you'll triple your pay. I was like, okay, now we're talking. So I didn't really think much of it. And then all of a sudden I got a call from a guy at a company in Tuckahoe, New York, saying he had gotten my name from somebody, and that would I mind coming in and interviewing for a research biochemistry position in this company, which I'd never even heard of the company. So I was like, sure, I'll come in. And what it was this guy who MD, PhD, had gotten his PhD from Harvard and his MD from Hamburg University. He wanted me in because I played soccer, and that's what he had heard about, my soccer playing, because he was from Hamburg. He was a huge soccer fan. So when I interviewed, he really didn't want to talk about biochemistry or research. He wanted to talk about soccer.
Yeah.
So I got the job, right? So I got the job. So I go in, I'm getting paid, I'm doing research with obviously the goal.
And John, for our listeners now, I think you mentioned earlier before we started recording that you played a little bit in Europe too, right?
Yes.
Didn't
Yeah,
you
I
play
played in Munich. Yeah,
that's probably why he got
or
the
1860 Munich.
He's
So
like,
all
oh,
this,
I gotta meet this biochemist that was also a goalie for a soccer team in Munich. That was
exactly
pretty unique.
It was. And, you know, I was playing semi-pro at that. I was playing for a team that played in the Metropolitan League in New York, which is a very high-end semi-professional soccer league. So I was playing in Franklin Heights, and this guy would come see me play. He would come from Tuckahoe, which is in Westchester County. He would drive down to watch me play.
And you got the job.
Yeah, and I got the job. So I'm doing this job. Now, I am the only athlete in the entire research department of this company, okay? Everybody else are real scientific eggheads, guys that have been doing this. And I was the guy trying to get them to go out and play softball or throw the Frisbee or do anything outside. And most of them were like, what are you, nuts? So I did that. And I got kind of a reputation in the company of being a very extroverted scientist, which most of the guys are very introverted, right? They're very,
of course.
So one day, the vice president of sales of the company called my boss and said, I understand that John Bruens is living outside of Danbury, Connecticut, and our sales territory in that area is open, and it's been open for like 3 months. Do you think John would be interested in that? And so my boss, this MD, PhD guy from Harvard, was getting his MBA at the time. And he wanted to get out of the labs. He wanted to get into senior management. And so a bunch of the other lab guys were doing this too. They were going getting their MBA. And that wasn't really in my line. So I said, well, they called me in, sat down with a couple of the people, and they said, we would like you to consider becoming a field sales representative. I was like, well, what is that? I had no idea, because in the labs, you don't get exposed to any of that kind of stuff. So they said, listen, you're going to go out with our rep who's in Stamford, Connecticut for a week and see if you like it. So I went with him, and we drove around, met doctors, talked about products. And I fell in love with this because you got a car, a brand new car. And you didn't have to cut the heads off of rats anymore. You didn't have to deal with isolating cells from blood. You didn't have to do any of that stuff anymore, working with radioisotopes and all that. I got to go outside and drive around in a brand new car. So the other interesting part of it, I had done a bunch of research on one of the products that was about to get FDA approval. And it was the big product for the company. So I went out as a sales rep carrying scientific reprints with my name on it. Again, I was probably the only rep in the country that could call on a doctor to talk about a new drug that's being launched, with the pharmacokinetics of that drug was done by me. And I had the reprints for it. So I went from a rookie rep to the number 2 rep in the company in 7 months.
Wow, congratulations.
That's incredible.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it was wild.
I'm sure Wade's a great salesperson as well, so I'm sure he has a couple of questions to
Thank you. Yeah, so John, whenever you made that change, I mean, what did you learn from that new side of the industry?
Well, it was all new. To me, it was all new. And it was so new. I'm going to give you a little story here that's going to be kind of funny. So I have this extensive technical understanding of how these products work. And so as a sales rep, you get marketing material from the marketing department of the company, which has no technical expertise at all. So I'm looking at the marketing material and I'm like, where did this come from? These guys don't even know what this molecule does. They're calling it a diuretic, and it's actually a calcium channel blocker. So I called the head of the product manager and said, you know, why are you doing this? Why are you calling this drug a diuretic? He said, because we're a diuretic company. I was like, okay, well, good. So I went back to my office and made my own promotional pieces, like 180 degrees from what the company was saying. I made my own sheets, my own detail pieces, didn't tell anybody, went out and started promoting this drug. And with these pieces, my sales were like that, where everybody's sales were like that. Right. And my district manager knew what I was doing and never said anything. And then he was a Vietnam veteran type of guy who had a bunch of friends who were also working in the company. And he asked me to go train the group in Buffalo, New York on my process. So I went up there, made a whole presentation, talked about what I was doing. The next morning, I got a call from the vice president of the company in my office, and he said, John, I got a question I'm going to ask you, and you have 5 seconds to answer it. Will you move into the home office, or will you be fired? And I can remember thinking, wait a minute, it's not much of a
That's
choice.
an easy question there.
Right. So I said, you know, what's this all about? He said, well, I understand you've been out using your own material to promote the drugs. And I said, yeah, of course, because the stuff he gave me from the marketing department is
it's not accurate.
He said, you know, that's illegal. I was like, it is? He goes, of course it is. The FDA has to. I said, nobody ever told me that. I never got that in training. When I went to sales training, they never said, oh, by the way, you have to use this material because it's FDA cleared. Anything else is outside. And I was like, oh, but the vice president said, but the way you did this and the way you thought about this, we want you inside. So that's how I went from research to sales inside the corporation, all in the same company in the matter of about 5.5 years.
Wow.
So they brought me into market research for new products. And I started evaluating technologies from other companies, hit on one from a company in Germany, which started this process of being recruited out of companies into new positions. And by the time I was 31 years old, I was the vice president of business development for a large international German-based pharmaceutical company. And by far the youngest. If you ever worked with a German pharmaceutical company, the senior management's all over 65, if not 80.
Congratulations, John.
Yeah,
and amazing career. Like that was so interesting how one kind of piece leads to the other, to the other.
It had nothing to do,
and
it wasn't
from
something
the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Well, something, maybe there's definitely something there. I don't know if it's the attitude or what would you say is pulling all this together so that you end up doing what you ultimately wanted to do.
I learned very early that, and I even had this discussion just 4 days ago with a guy at Northwestern Medical Center. I said, you know, I was never one to plan out my future just because I didn't have that real ability to do that. I went where I was offered to go. And that was it. I was dragged, you know, and I made some stupid decisions. I switched companies after being there 8 months to go to a higher paid job, which if I could go back, I would say probably don't do that. But still, I just went where I felt the opportunities were pulling me. Not that I was, you know, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. I never did that. I've never done that until I got very high up in the senior.
Wow. That's incredible, because not a lot of people are so brave, right? You need to be
lucky.
Brave
I don't know if it's bravery.
Everyone needs to be lucky. Everyone needs to be lucky for sure. But it's also like making sure that you're taking some of those opportunities and moving along these lines. Team Bruce and you founded Global Transplant Solutions in 2014.
Yeah.
Where did this idea come from, and how do you go from like successful career to, you know what, let's just start again?
All right. Well, that's a long, kind of a long story that I'm not going to waste all of your time on, because I could spend an hour talking about how that happened. But anyway, I had become a senior executive in a large global biotech company. I was running a large division. Issues within the company resulted in my division that I was managing to be put up for sale. because of economic issues within the company. So I went from managing a team of about 180 to 200 people, managing their day-to-day operations, to selling that operation. I became the head of the divestiture group for this division. And the company had set a dollar amount on what they expected to get for this division, which was about 5 times what I knew it was worth. So, and I told them, I think, you're barking up the wrong tree. And they said, no, this is what we're doing. So after about 4 months or 5 months, whatever it was, of trying to sell it, I realized, A, it's not going to happen. And B, the only group that would really be formidable to buy it was me in my senior team. So I went to the company and said, listen, I'm not going to try to sell this anymore. I'm going to try to buy it. Are you up? Are you in for that? Will you go for that? And they said, well, if you can do it, go for it. So this was, again, a complete 180 degrees from what I'd done,
Yeah.
So I went out and found a bunch of A-listed venture capital companies, pulled a group of them together, raised like $58 million, went in and bought this division, and learned the most valuable lesson I have ever learned in my entire career, which was, don't believe anything a venture capitalist tells you. Because they are masters at telling you what you want to hear, which is nothing to do with what they want to do. So I got brutally, I would say, I won't use any bad terms, but I got brutalized by them, to the point where I actually walked away. I just walked away from this company.
Wow.
I had,
After how long kind of working with the new co?
about 18 months. We got the
found
money,
out
we got the
very
rights.
quickly that it was not going to work.
I had been brought into this division to revamp the commercial strategy around a portfolio of products for neurology. And one of the fishbowl product within that portfolio had been mismanaged, inappropriately marketed, all those things. And so when I came in, I started to revamp that whole process. And then I was selling it, and I wanted to carry those plans in. And the VC said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do what the other guys did for the last 10 years. It didn't work. And I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? I mean, obviously, you keep doing the same thing and failing. That's a lesson there. They didn't
Yeah, you're
want
going to get the same results.
Yeah, they didn't want to hear that. So after bumping heads and seeing, I said, heck with you guys, I'm out of here. And I left, and sure enough, like 9 months later, they sold that company to a larger company for about 18 cents on the dollar, because they had completely messed up the whole program. And so from that point forward, I said, whatever I do, if I can, I am not going to use outside money like that. I'm not going to use money whose primary objective is to make more money, not to establish a proper management, not to go forward with maybe some risky ideas, but ideas that have certainly more strength to them or whatever. I said, I'm not going to do that, because I always felt, even when I was in the labs, I always felt, I'm going to run a company someday. I don't know when, I don't know what. I just always felt that the people I'm working for, their primary goal always seemed to be in conflict with what I thought it should be, which is normally the goal is to make as much money as you can, to increase market share, do all those things. And all those things happen with every company at the expense of other things. And so I felt that's not what I was going to do. I didn't want to do it that way. It didn't feel fun, didn't feel right. So I did that, and I left that company and everything. So I started another company here in South Carolina in Transplant, which we're not going to get into that because right now they're one of our major competitors. I started that company and ran into the same issue. The founders, the financial backers of that company had a objective in a kind of a performance attitude that was in direct conflict with what the market wanted. And I knew that. I knew what the market wanted. It's the transplant market. I had spent a bunch of time evaluating, because when I got offered the opportunity to get into organ transplant, the one thing that struck me was I'd spent my entire life in pharmaceuticals and biotechnology, and I knew nothing about transplant. I could tell you everything you want to know about diabetes or AIDS or cardiovascular disease or whatever. But transplant, organ transplant, I knew what it was. You take an organ out of one person, put it in another person, but I had no idea what it really was. And when I dug in, it was like, wow, This is really amazing. And what's really amazing about it is the people who dedicate their lives to this. The people whose lives are dedicated to organ transplant are the most unique group of people on the planet. Because when you think about what they have to do every day, they have to deal with the trauma and the disaster of somebody losing their life, usually in a traumatic fashion of some kind, and then transitioning that, you know, terrible situation into the life-saving process of an organ transplant. It takes a very unique person to do that. You just can't pull somebody off the street and say, we're going to make you involved in this. Because imagine this is your job, right? It's Christmas Eve and you're sitting with your family, playing with your kids under the tree, and maybe you got some gifts and you're playing around. You get a phone call and you find out a 7-year-old boy has just passed away because he choked on a Lego. And you have to leave your family, go to that hospital, and convince that kid's parents to donate their organs.
Wow, that's tough.
Imagine doing that every day.
I can't even imagine.
So when I got into this, I realized the marketing, the positioning, the approach isn't going to the guys running the OPOs, organ procurement organizations, or the transplant surgeons. It was going to these people and saying, listen, I'm here to support what you guys are doing. You guys on the front lines dealing with this situation. And if I can make your lives better, we'll be successful. And that's what we did.
Wow. Congratulations. And that's how Global Transplant Solutions is born.
Well, kind of,
I think Wade has, I'm sorry, Wade, I didn't mean to jump in, but this is an amazing story. Thanks for sharing, John. But I know, Wade, you have a couple questions.
Yeah, definitely. So John, with Global Transplant Solutions was established, with a strong commitment to, fostering the mission of organ donation, even ensuring that every employee is a registered organ donor. How has this vision shaped, the company's culture and operations, and what impact do you believe it has on your success in the organ procurement and transplant market?
Well, fostering the mission, right? That is our tagline. You can see it right there. And the mission is no one should die waiting for an organ. If you look in the United States, there's about 100,000 people right now on the waiting list for an organ. And every year, somewhere around 8,000 people die because they don't have the time to get an organ. So the mission is, in our minds, now some other people have a different view of it, but my view of the mission is no one should die waiting for an organ. In a country our size, with the resources we have, the medical schools we have, the expertise we have, no one should die waiting for an organ.
I agree.
Right, but it still happens. So that was a message that only really I understood, right? Because in the beginning, the people that I was working with early on in the formation of Global Transplant really didn't have the appreciation of that side of it the way I did. So that they had to learn that, and they had to become a part of their lives. So I structured the company to allow every employee to make that commitment, that to understand what it means to foster the mission, and how fostering the mission today may have a significant impact on your family 5 years from now. Because you never know when you may need a liver, or your heart gives out, or your kidneys give out. And all of a sudden you go from somebody that didn't know anything about organ transplant to a person that's all you think about now. Every morning you wake up thinking, is today the day I'm going to get my organ? And that day you go to bed wondering, boy, I hope tomorrow's that day. That's your life, right? When you're on this.
Absolutely.
So educating the employees here on the importance of that was the primary goal, and not just a tagline, but a real driver of our business. And that's been established. We have the greatest employees on the planet as far as I'm concerned, and it worked. And it continues to work.
That's great. I'm an organ donor. I signed up for that a long time ago, and every time I change cities or get a new license, I make sure that I check that box.
But that's an interesting point, Wade, because when I started going out to the organ procurement organizations, there are 55 of them in the United States. They're mostly, vast majority are nonprofits. And their primary, if not exclusive objective, is to procure the organs from a donor and then transfer those organs to a transplant center somewhere in the country to have those organs transplanted. And when I went into the first couple of OPOs and met with their senior management, one of the questions I asked them was, well, how many of your employees are registered organ donors? Not one of them could tell me what the percentage was.
Really?
They didn't even know their employees. And I was like, how could you not know if
Right.
your employees are organ donors and this is your job?
It's part of your DNA.
Exactly. So when I saw that, I said, when I started this company, I said, I will not hire any individual who hasn't, without anything, registered to be an organ donor. If you're not a registered organ donor, don't even come in for an interview because you haven't even taken the first step of understanding what fostering the mission means.
That's right. It's like taking an oath.
Yeah, exactly. And when you start talking to people about that, about are you a registered organ donor, and you see, oh, absolutely. As soon as I had that opportunity, I took it. I know the importance of this, even though I don't really know what the importance is, but I know how important it is. And, one of the things I tell all of our employees all the time is, you can go your entire life from birth to death without ever getting the opportunity to save someone's life. But as an organ donor, you're almost guaranteed to do that. And it's kind
pretty
of
powerful
into the company. Yeah.
It is very, very powerful, and I'm sure that actually instills a sense of purpose to your team and your company that makes it a more successful company to
It's
work
more,
for.
my employees
Congratulations.
will tell you this is more than a job.
Congratulations.
Every one of them will say that this is much more than a job.
So, John, talking a little bit to the entrepreneurs in our community, you actually did a couple of things that are very interesting for me from like that entrepreneurial standpoint. You actually aligned with the organizations like the SC Launch and the Spartan Community College Spark Center, the Spark Center.
Mhm.
So if you don't mind telling us a little bit more what those centers are, what are those communities, what Spark Center means, and then also what was the significance of their support in you growing your company successfully, and would you recommend this or something similar to other startup out there?
Absolutely. So when you think about what I said before, my taste for venture capital was destroyed from my first example. So when I was going to start this company, and I met Tim Bruce, kind of again, almost by accident, and we decided, okay, we're going to do this. I said, well, the one thing we're going to do is we're going to self-fund this as much as we can out of our own pockets. I took a second mortgage on my house, that kind of thing, right? And because I didn't want the investors to be the ones dictating the direction of the company. And you can't always do that, but we could. And so one of the first things that came up when we were starting was, the economic development programs. Every state has one. Every county has one. Big cities all have them. So they all have economic development departments with initiatives related to how they want to build their business infrastructure with whether it's the state, whether it's the county, or whether it's a local type of thing. And so I was already in South Carolina. I had graduated from Clemson, so I'm kind of a South Carolinian to some extent, maybe an expat, if you want to call it that. But so when I met with the economic development people, first with the state, they clearly had an initiative for healthcare and medical products to come in. They were trying to build that community because South Carolina is not considered one of the, hotbeds for biotechnology research or anything. So when I met with them and explained what I believed the state needed, which included my company, but not to spend all their resources on R&D, but bring in companies that sell products, because when you sell products and make a profit, that is a seed that will continue to grow and expand. If you're dumping money into R&D constantly, you're rolling the dice like a VC guy. 1 in 10 is going to make it. So, I did that. And the first thing that popped up was, well, which county are you going to go? You have Greenville County, you got Spartanburg County, you got down in Columbia, you got down in Charleston. And I felt that Greenville seemed to be an up and coming city. They were doing all this stuff, but we were too small. Spartanburg stepped in and said, listen, we really love you in Spartanburg County. And we happen to have this Spark Center, which is a incubator, an entrepreneurial incubator as part of the Spartanburg Community College network. And they gave us free space. They gave us the ability to build a warehouse in their facility so we could have our products, and allowed us to not spend a lot of resources or time getting ourselves established, but focused on things like getting FDA approval for our products and getting our logistics systems in place. Because remember, our business is we bring products in from a manufacturer, we warehouse them, and then we distribute them around the country. And our customers buy from us every 2 weeks or once a month or every 3 weeks, whatever their schedule is. So when you have a customer, they're more than a customer because they're going to buy from you as long as you service them properly every month. Right. And so to do that, you have to have product. It has to arrive efficiently, cost effectively. And so the logistics part of our business is as important as the manufacturing part of our business. And so early on, we had some real stumbles with logistics groups that, couldn't adhere to their promises, couldn't even adhere to the basic principles of good business, and it soured my taste to how we're going to do this. I mean, we're going to have to establish our own logistics to get product from our manufacturer. Then I met Wade. And everything changed.
Here he goes.
Yes. And I parted the waters and everything is well again. No. So
it's
John,
true though. When you don't have to think, when you don't have to think about logistics, when you don't really have to spend a lot of time on it, you just, you have to keep an eye on it because, as you know, as well as anybody, stuff happens. Stuff happens all the time in this type of thing.
That's right.
Yeah. And so if you have a company that is focusing on that and realizes how important our products are to the general population and to the health of the national, systems here, that takes a lot of weight off our shoulders. And I don't know if I can even communicate it properly of how important that was. And so when you went someplace else, we went with you.
Yeah. Well, I quickly notified you of that for sure. Yeah. So, being your, logistics partner for a few years now, I've had the privilege and opportunity to watch you guys, through your growth and support you through, challenges of expansion and introducing new products, so on and so forth. What do you think enabled that rapid growth? And especially during like the pandemic and other, compared to other similar companies who were struggling with their supply chains during that time?
Sure. I would love to say it was our genius that did it, but it wasn't. One of the things that happened early on, at even almost simultaneously with the pandemic, is two of our major competitors in the US had some issues with their production capabilities and quality, and they had to basically have a withdrawal, which left Global Transplant Solutions as the only supplier of this product line. So there's 55 organ procurement organizations in the United States, all of them using the solutions that we make. When the pandemic started, we had maybe 5% market share. That's kind of a guess because we were at 5%. You don't really worry about that much. It's more increasing it. And then all of a sudden, literally on Friday, we were 5%. On Monday, we're getting calls. I'll tell you how it really was introduced. We had an account in the Northwest, and they called us and said, listen, could you ship us 50 cases of your product? And we're like, sure. And I hung up the phone and I went out to the guy and said, oh, look at this. That was the biggest order by far we'd ever had. And we were kind of celebrating and saying, let's get all ready. Then I stood back and said, whoa, wait, okay. Why on earth are they ordering 50 cases all the way across the country? So I called them back and I said, thanks for the order and everything, but I have a question for you. Why are you doing this? And they said, what, haven't you heard? I was like, heard what? Your competition's been pulled off the market. You're the only game in town. And I can remember my throat going, ah. Because we kept inventory for 5% of the market. And now 90% of the market was coming to us. Our products are manufactured in Italy in a GMP EU certified sterile solution manufacturer in Bergamo, Italy. And all of a sudden, our inventory represented 10% of our potential sales. So
Wow.
we had to go to Italy and ramp up their manufacturing and quintuple the orders that we normally had. And now for that to work, we had to have an organization like yours to get it here. So
That's
we
right.
were flying pallets of product
Oh,
on
yeah.
airplanes. Do you remember that?
I do. It was like every other week. It
Yeah.
was, 20 pallets or something at a time.
Yeah. Sometimes we got 2 planes, 40 at some.
Yeah.
The FDA called me when this happened and they said, apparently you're the only guys in town. Are you going to be able to handle the national amount? And of course, me being who I am, I'm like,
Of course.
no problem.
Of course. I've got Wade.
I got Wade.
Yes.
But not really knowing what that meant. I got to be honest. We didn't really know what that meant. So when we looked at the volumes, I basically said, and actually the FDA said, we have to order about 120% of what the national requirement is for solutions. That's a lot of product, expensive, millions of dollars, without really knowing what the future held. And so we did it. We just sucked it up and said, we're going to figure out how to do this and how to pay for it later, but let's get the product here now. And so the FDA basically said, if we can help you. And I said, well, do you have any money? That would help us. And they're like, that's really not our cup of tea. So I said, all right, as long as you guys are there, if I need you, we're going to do this. And I guaranteed to the FDA, we will have 100% of the product to cover the entire market going forward. And we did that. And so our market share went from 5% to about 65% in 2.5 to 3 months. And it stayed.
Incredible.
And that's where we are now. It's, I expected this ramp up. I mean, it was literally like that we would hit. And then as the dust settled, the pandemic fell back, the supply chains corrected themselves, no more ships sitting out at sea for 6 months waiting to get into a port.
Oh, yeah.
We figured it would go down, after the dust settled, but it didn't. It went up and it's going up again. So that performance, that partnership between what we were doing at GTS and what you were doing from your logistics side resulted in our ability to manage this process effectively. Now, we didn't do it perfectly. We had to destroy probably $500,000 worth of product because it just expired. Our products have short lifespan, but that was the investment we had to do to ensure no organ that needed to be procured couldn't be. We ensured they all could be. And so the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah.
John, with everything you have told us, and I'll let Wade ask the next question after real quick, but you have so much experience in very different areas. You have taken so many different challenges you have made, and you said it yourself, a lot of mistakes as well. So if you, and I'll flip the question a bit to what it's normal, to the way that it's normally asked, but if your younger self could advise or suggest something to you now, I mean, what do you think that younger goalkeeper playing in Germany would tell you?
He would probably say, I don't believe what you're saying. Get it all out of here. If I was to show up, I don't know if you're a South Park fan, but there's an episode of South Park where Cartman goes back in time to meet himself, and himself says, "Get out of here! I'm not going to listen to what you say." No, I would have probably not believed me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because back then, the future was what it was, and I wasn't really focusing. I was focusing on the point. I think I would have said, always keep your eyes open, which I try to do anyways, but as you can tell, I'm not only risk averse, I kind of look for risk, right?
Yeah.
I look for it, and then I try to figure out how can we deduct that. I think I would have told my young self, no matter how nervous it makes you, the pit of your stomach is tying in a knot because you're about to go forward on something you have you have no idea what the outcome is going to be. I would say, trust your gut. Keep doing it. Don't take the defeats to mean anything except their learning experiences, and don't think your successes are all you, because they're typically not. They're actually, if you're responsible for half of it, consider yourself lucky.
Right.
There's so many forces out there impacting what you do. I would tell my younger self, be yourself. continue to, trust your gut and always be honest. I spent so much time in the pharmaceutical and biotech world where honesty is a marketing handle. It's not necessarily an internal fortitude or anything. And that always bothered me. When you're in transplant, dishonesty kills people, literally kills people. And, I learned that very early. And so I would tell my younger self, which my younger self was that way too, stick to being honest with yourself, honest with your customers, honest with your cohorts, colleagues, and employees, whatever they are. Always be honest and transparent. In my company right now, every employee knows what our sales are. Every employee knows what our expenses are. I hired senior management here from the OPO world. Many of my employees have forgotten more about the transplant business than I will ever know. So when I brought them in, I said, okay, I'm going to do something for you that I know is going to blow your mind, and it's probably going to take you 5 years to figure this out, but you're going to come into this company and you're going to be your own boss. I'm not going to be your manager. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Actually, I expect you to tell me what to do. But when it comes time for reviews, I'm not going to review you. You're going to review you. You're going to look in the mirror and say, did I do what I should? Did I do everything I could? Am I comfortable? Am I feel responsible for the direction I am taking as an employee? Do I feel I've done everything I possibly could? And if you tell yourself, well, probably not, well, now you know what next year is going to be. And I've done that with all of our employees. Now, many people cannot handle that, right? I mean, I can tell you some of the best employees I've had in this, that I have in this company, took them 3 years to really understand what this means, that you report to you. You don't report to me. I may set your pay, but even that is up to discussion. And I am open to talk about these things. So if you come to GTS right now, we are the highest paid employees in the state of South Carolina for the titles that we have. We are at about 150% of the average pay here. And since I started this company commercially in 2017, we have had one employee leave. And that one employee took a job at an OPO to be one of these people that talk to families to convince them to donate their organs.
Wow, that's some kind of calling. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really tough.
Thank
Now,
you
I
for
don't know,
sharing. Wait.
luckily we're a small enough company that we can have this kind of, this attitude. I doubt Ford or BMW or anybody could do that, where everybody
No.
reports of themselves. Probably be chaos in about 2 hours. But here in this business, we can do that. And I would say any entrepreneurs out there that are looking at very niche, focused, highly technical businesses, it's worth thinking about, because I don't know everything. I don't know anything, actually. When you look at this business, I've got guys that have worked in organ procurement and transplant for 35 years. They know it inside and out. They actually built some of it. So for me to tell them what to do, that's stupid. And there are two things that'll kill a small company. Now, any company really, but there's two things that'll kill a startup: being stupid and being greedy. Those two things will kill you. And so we are not, I guess sometimes we're stupid. I guess you can't help that, but we are not greedy. I promise you, we are not greedy. That's something I will not allow.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
So John, transporting organs is a delicate process, as you know, and supply chain management is a key, is key for successful results. Through your products, you enable life-saving organs to reach their final destination safely. What have you learned in this process, and what surprised you?
Ooh, that's a question we could answer for a couple of days. Again, putting yourself in the shoes of your customers, how important our solutions are to the process of saving a transplant recipient's life. We play a critical role in that. It's not about profit. It's not about market share. It's about performing and providing the highest caliber of service and dedication to our customers. And my review of our employees is very simple. I mean, and this is the God's honest truth. The only thing I look at on a daily basis is what is our customers saying to us? What is their feedback on what we're doing?
Always a good measuring stick.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I don't measure, I don't care if you come in at 8:30 in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 9 o'clock at night. I do not care. We have no time clocks. We have none of that. You get your job done. And if the customer says, God, you guys are the best, that's it. And every employee knows that. We have, back in the pandemic, one of the issues our customers had was that they had FedEx and UPS and even mail coming into their facilities 2 or 3 times a day. And you had no idea where those drivers, were they exposed to the virus? Were they sick? You had no idea. And many of the OPOs, now these OPO employees are dealing with transplant recipients, seriously ill individuals. And the last thing they could even ever get close to being exposed to is something like the COVID virus. So what we decided to do is we said, okay, we're hearing our customers saying this is a concern. So we went out and bought vehicles. We bought a used Tahoe was our first vehicle, then a used Suburban, then a used Expedition. I hired drivers. They're not really drivers, they're representatives. And we started direct delivery of all of our products to our customers, which meant the driver, the representative, picked the products out that were ordered, loaded the vehicle, got in and drove it. So only one person touched that product from the order to the delivery. And it was expensive, but all of a sudden we're hearing from our customers like, wow, this is something. When I see your van coming in, we're all happy. We know we're getting our product. We know it's safe. We know it's clean, and we know it's going to be on time. We never have to worry about it. And that was another one of the drivers of our success, is that we hired individuals that understand and appreciate the dynamics of this business, and they deliver the product to our customers with that attitude. And
yeah, for sure. I can relate to that. I've learned over the years that, in this niche market with the cold chain and with pharma industry, it's, you have to go above and beyond every time. And communication is key. White glove service is, the ultimate. You have to provide that. You have to, be on time and keep them updated 100% of the time. This is more than any other type of industry.
Absolutely. And it's a differentiable component.
Yeah.
You can show your superiority over your competition by doing these kind of things, by being so focused on customer service that I don't even think customer service is the term anymore, because it's more of a in-depth partnership between us as a supplier of these solutions, that every organ that's procured, basically, especially from a deceased donor, uses these solutions. So they're critical to the overall process. And so that requires a kind of a different level of relationship with your customers. It almost becomes a part of it. So, and that's what we focus on, and that's fostering the mission. Fostering the mission is anything that improves the likelihood of an organ being donated and procured and successfully transplanted. Those processes, anything we can do, whether it sells our products or not, to support it, we do it. Since we've started, we've given over $2.5 million to educational programs through the U.S. to get people to understand the importance of organ donation. And it's something we will continue to do.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Well,
Got another follow-up question for you. How does GTS ensure that you consistently meet the high standards of importing and exporting your products?
By focusing and having a partner like you that understands. We've had too many experiences with people that talk a good talk, but don't walk the walk.
Yeah.
And, we've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because of poor decision-making by our logistics partners in the early stages. And once that evaporated, when we hooked up with you guys, it became a part of the business that we know we know where you are, you know us, you know where we are. We talk regularly, and we constantly look at ways to improve the process so that our customers feel it. And we know they do. We know. We've never had a back order. We have never missed an order delivery. It may have been a little late because there's an accident on 85 going into Atlanta or something.
Of
You know, the
course.
truck was supposed to be there at 11 and it shows up at 3, but we've never missed a delivery. Even when we've
Good.
had things break down, we've done that. You know, sometimes things get late in delivery, right? Sometimes the ports are overworked or whatever. But you focus on it. You ensure it gets to us when we need it. And that's what we appreciate. And I think it's it's the critical part of the business. We have to assume our manufacturers are continually adhering to the GMP practices to ensure the quality of the products of the higher standard. But if we can't get the product into our facility, what difference does it make, right? So that's it.
Very
So
good.
John, we're almost wrapping up this amazing conversation. We really thank you for being here and being our guest.
My pleasure.
Couple like final questions for you, and I'll let, of course, Wade close us out. But what changes would you like to see in the future? I mean, you've been in this industry, you passionately like it, you have an amazing mission to make sure that no one should die waiting for an organ. What are, first and foremost, what's your vision for the industry as a whole and the things that you would like to change? Maybe just one or two. And
Yeah.
then what are your future plans for Global Transplant Solutions? What can we expect from you guys?
Well, you know, from the future plans point of view, there are other products that are used within the procurement process on a regular basis that we're now getting into. And we will be launching those in the next 6 to 12 months. These are new products. They're not new products, but they're products. One of the things about the organ procurement business, it's very small. You have 55 customers, really. And then you have transplant centers, which have their own, you know, kind of focused business. But OPOs, the ones that procure the organs, there's 55 of them. So from a supply standpoint, your numbers are not, you know, when you think about it, there are more prescriptions for insulin in a day than there are transplants in a year. So when it comes to the size of the business, you have to size your company to fit into that. And that's what we've done. Many companies grow and get big and think they have to keep growing. So they bring on novel technologies which really don't benefit the market, but benefit the company. So, you know, one of my primary goals and focuses is anything we do has to benefit the market. If it benefits the market, it will benefit us. But if it only benefits us, it's, you know, it just doesn't fit. So, you know, we have a line of products. The market is changing. The technical components of the markets are changing. They're going to require a different level of solutions to be used. And we're actively getting involved in what the future of organ preservation is going to look like. Because in 10 years from now, organ preservation is going to be a lot different than it is today. And we hope to be on the front end of that. Or, you know, what I prefer is to let other companies build the highway, and then we just put a better car on there. So, you know,
Yeah.
that's what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Okay. And John, you know, wrapping up a little bit here, how can our listeners connect with you and, of course, you know, learn more about Global Transplant Solutions?
They can go on our website, globaltransplantsolutions.com. There's a number on there. You can call me directly. My cell phone is 803-673-4548. Anybody wants to call and chat, feel free. I'm a busy guy, so don't be too upset if I don't pick it up or don't call you right back, but I will eventually. So yeah, I'm open. The more people that call, the better. I love to talk about this. I love to talk to entrepreneurs who are trying to start business, especially niche businesses. I think my background and experiences could help some of these people. So anytime they can call you, Wade, and you can tell them where I am, and they can call me and vice versa. So I am an open book. Call when you want.
Very good.
John, thank you. Thank you so much for this interview. It has been a masterclass in many, many different ways. Congratulations for your very successful career. It's a pleasure to have you. Wade, it was great co-hosting with you. Thanks for everything. And if you like conversations like the one we just had with John, please don't forget to sign up for Logistics with Purpose. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next episode.